and we're just going to pray that we can keep this angle as we make our downswings. When I contract my wrist flexors, you can see it extends that angle, keeping the wrist nice and loose and relaxed. Now after we've done this and we feel pretty comfortable with this, we're going to go that my wrist, as my left wrist is in front of my right thigh, this club is still parallel to the ground. So if you freeze frame your video, this club should still be parallel at this point when your left wrist is in front of your right thigh. That's a real good key when you're making a full swing to check and see if you're getting enough lag. That's going to tell you if you're getting the proper amount or not. Now one other thing is that as I'm swinging down, I want your right arm to be extended the wrist very early to create an angle of lag, and then we're going to try to hold this throughout the swing. It's one of the worst things that you can do to build lag. I'm going to talk about the science wide takeaway. So I'm not going to set my wrist early at all. If you look at a lot of the top players, you look at Adam Scott, very wide takeaway, not very much wrist set at all. You look at Rory McIlroy, look at Tiger Woods. All these players are using a wide takeaway and not getting very much wrist set, so that later in the swing, as we start down, we can increase this wrist set, and we're really only going to max out this angle of lag for a split second. Shoulders. And as I go to the top of the backswing, or what would be the top of my backswing, I'm going to make sure that the grip into my club actually points to the right of my right toe. So if you look at that, if this is pointing down on the ground, it's going to be pointing over here, and that's going to, as we come through the shot, I'm going to be through here. This would be about in my straight line release from the system. So when I'm releasing the club about 45 in front, that's going to be where I would be here. And you can see that I'm staying down in my posture. So if you look at it from this direction, I'm staying down. It's going to be pointing down the fairway. So now I'm going toward probably the right rough, not exactly down the fairway, but you see my hips are fake. And I'm going to take a step, and I'm going to feel like there's a stick that I step onto in the ground, and I'm going to push down into that ground like I was going to break that stick. And what that's going to allow me to do, as I push down into the ground, my left side of my body, my hip, my shoulder, my hands are working up, and it allows that club to whip on through there. So this club, as it's coming down, the grip into the club would be down here, and as you turn this back up and release the club, the grip is actually moving back up, and the club head is moving down and away, and that allows that thing on. As I take that step into the ground, and then bam, I'm going to snap that stick and allow my club to whip on through contact. So I'm going to do about 100 of those too. Alright guys, I just finished, was that I really got some very little wrist set as I'm going back. Club was pointing up in the air, and then really set the club hard in the downswing. So it looks something like this, like that. So I'm going really wide, no wrist set, and then I'm setting the wrist in the downswing, and then from there, bam, I'm releasing everything just like we teach in the straight line release in the Top Speed Golf system. In the shoulder, not actually going to do that, but feel like that. It's going to be wider. I don't have a lot of wrist flexibility, so it's about as close as I can get. And then as you release, bam, feel like you're really letting that club go out and into the ground, like you're going to launch that club head out into the front. And when we do this in a full swing, it's not going to look as severe. And take your grip, we'll swing to the top. Go ahead and let your club rest across your shoulder. And then you're going to feel like you pull this club out as far as you can go. Now you notice my hands kind of come off the club. I can't keep my palm or the kind of the meaty part of the bottom of my hand on the club if I do that, because my wrist isn't flexible enough. But I'm going to go ahead and try that, and then to swing on through, we're going to go ahead and do that about 10 times. So I'm going to go put it on my back, pull the club across my shoulders, and then swing all the way on through. Again, you're going to feel really loose in your wrist. Lag is potential energy. What's going to give you the speed is releasing that lag. So as we're coming into our downswing, we're creating a large angle between the forearm and the club, and we're going to be releasing this angle as we get to the full release. So just very, very wide. As I go to the top of my swing, I'm building lag. As I start down, I'm building more lag until I get to about halfway in my downswing, then I'm maxing it out. That's the same as maxing out that stretch when you're about to jump up and grab a rebound. From there, from this point, now everything is going to be releasing, making my fulcrum down here. So as I'm gripping the club, for those of you who haven't seen some of the other videos in the system, as I'm gripping the club, I want to make sure that the bottom two fingers, my pinky finger and my ring finger on my left hand, are where that fulcrum is to create lag and then to be able to release lag. So keep that in mind. This is where you want the pressure on the club as you're going through these drills. So the first piece of this drill, as I mentioned before, is creating that nice wide takeaway. I don't want to get lag early. I want to be able to create lag as I'm starting into the downswing. So I'm keeping the pressure in the ground. That's going to make me feel like my thumb is also pointing a little bit down toward the ground as I'm going back, and I'm going to have very, very little wrist set. So that's going to be our first position here. So position number one, I'm going to do my takeaway, very little wrist set. I want my club to be about waist height when it's parallel with the ground. Hand here, I'm not pushing on the club from way up here with my index finger on my right hand, which would be a casting motion. So position number one, very little wrist set off the ground, it's about belt high, very little wrist set. Position number two, I'm going to complete my swing. As I start down, now I'm going to feel like as I'm halfway in my downswing, I got a nice sharp angle with this club, and all the pressure is in the bottom two fingers of my left hand. Position number three, this is the release. I'm going to come to the full release point. So my body is rotating. I'm getting my hips to clear out of the way. My club is fully releasing. And now you can see as my club is 45 with the ground, both arms are nice and straight. I've fully released this club, and my hands are now turning down the other direction. So I don't want to see a bunch of wrist set. You're going to get a little bit of rotation in the hips, so don't really worry about too much of that. You're just thinking about shifting the weight from the inside of your right foot to the center, or the center of your ankle on your left foot. So it's going to start out by looking like this, and you'll also notice as I'm doing this, I'm starting to let this club hinge a little bit. So here's step one. We're going to check this position, go in slow motion, make sure you're in the right spot. Then you're going to start move two by shifting the weight to the left and beginning to let these wrists hinge, or to wrists to cock, just like in the down cock drill we talk about on the side. So it's going to look like this in step one. We're going to go to step two, and that's the first piece. We're going to shift our weight. The second piece I want you to check is when your left hand is in front of your right thigh, you want to make sure that this club is at least parallel to the ground. That's a good checkpoint for you. Now you don't want to do this by cupping this left wrist. That's too much. We're trying to get too much lag here. Go ahead and keep this left wrist nice and flat, and make sure that as that left wrist is in front of your right thigh, one, I want to make sure that I started out by shifting my weight to the left. Number two, as my left wrist gets in front of my right thigh, my club is going to be parallel to the ground, or a little bit better. That's fine. And piece three, I want to make sure that I got a little bit of space between my right side and my right elbow. So we've done step one, we've done step two. Now we need to do step three, and that's go wide as we release this club. Now one thing you'll notice is that as I release this club, so if you guys are watching this on YouTube, just about shoulder width apart, maybe just slightly wider than that, my right foot. So if I grab my club here, I should be feeling like I'm putting pressure on the inside of my right foot. Go ahead and do about 100 repetitions of this, and practice inside of the right foot, center of the left foot. So really very little movements as you're doing this. You're really going to get your power. Your hips and your shoulders need to rotate back and then through in the golf swing if you're going to get a lot of power. Again, put your arms across your shoulders, and we're going to make a little turn as we go with the inside of the right foot now. As we come on through, we're going to make a turn coming on through. As I come through, return, and then I'm coming on through. Notice as I come up, my right toe is completely off the ground. So if I go this way, shift all the way on through, and my right toe is going to come all the way up, straight up and down. You're going to do about come all the way on through, pointing to the target. If you look at my shoulders now, as I go back, they're going to go 90, and they're going to go all the way on through past 90 as I come through the target there. About 100 repetitions of that. We're going to tackle one of the biggest misconceptions that there is in golf, especially for beginning players. I know that I used to think this when I was between our hands, and I want you to imagine that there's a swing plane, kind of an angle as you're swinging back and through. And as I come back, you'll see how my arms rotate to get this club on plane, or to get this book matching that plane. So as I go back, my hands are going to turn. It's actually my forearms are going to rotate open as I'm going back and close as I'm going through to get that club, or to get this book on plane. So if we're looking square, and then rotate as I'm coming on through to get it on plane going through. So I want you to do a good 100 repetitions of this. I would probably recommend doing more than 100 of the book drill, because a lot of people tend to want to do this and go square to square, as opposed to let that open, getting on plane, and then following on through nice and to a good full finish. Once we've done 100 with this rotation, I'm going to focus on getting my shoulders fully loaded like we worked on in the first drill, and then getting those to turn all the way on through as we come on through the shot. So again, if you struggle with this, let's imagine I was hitting that direction. As I'm coming down, my hips are going, I'm loading into the ground, my club's almost parallel with the ground here, and then from there, you can see that I have an angle between my upper leg, which would be my femur, and my torso, or my pelvis there. And as I start to extend, now I'm going to drive up from my legs, and as I release the club out here in front, go into my straight line release like we talked about in the system, and then a little bit past that, now you're going to see the angle between my femur and my upper body, my torso is completely gone as I come up into the finish, and I've extended these angles. This is working down. My shirt buttons feel like they're moving down closer to the golf ball. My hips are going to feel like they're kind of going back that way. So if I go squat down, you'll hear some people talk about the Sam Snead squat or the Tiger squat. Well, that's all they're doing. They're just doing this to an extreme amount. As they start their downswing, they're letting those knees kind of separate a little bit, and their chest is working down toward the ball. I'm going to feel like if somebody had my left hip here, they'd be pushing it back, and I'm starting to clear my hip out of the way so I can stay down and into my posture. As I continue down and come onto the release of the ball, and as I come through, I'm staying in posture. My hips are moving back that way, feeling like I'm pushing this way with my left hip to clear out of the way, and now I'm in my posture. I can really cover that golf ball. The opposite of that would be as I go to the top of the backswing, and then I stand up, and all of a sudden my shoulders are level, my hips are moving to the ball too early. So as I let that club whip on through contact, now my leg is straightening out with my torso. It's not happening to the second part of the swing though. So I'm getting tons of lag, tons of power, and then from there, now I'm going to extend out coming through the shot, and I've lost this angle. So if you have early extension, if you're not covering the golf ball, I'm flexing in the downswing, then I'm extending, this is losing that angle after contact. If you're early extending, you're doing that before contact. So number one, I got to get rid of that feet. That's what's going to get that club to whip on through there. That's when I'm going to be exploding up to help turn that grip back in up toward my body. That's going to really get it to accelerate. So as my hips and legs are going to start to bend. You'll start to see some bend between my right leg and my torso. My chest is getting a little closer to the ground. I'm going to start to come up out of that as I hit the golf ball, but then even in my release, you can see my shoulders are still in the posture. I've stayed nice and through my posture, and I can really, what's called, cover this golf ball. So I'm going to be able to really compress it, get a lot of forward shaft lean, and start my downswing. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this upper leg is angled out, and then as I come through, I'm letting my hip turn back behind my body. That allows me to rotate, and you'll see now I can stay on top of this golf ball, cover the golf ball, and stay in my posture. If we're looking at it from this angle, again, I'm going to go to the top of the backswing here. My first move down, I'm letting this upper leg kind of angle out, and then I'm clearing those hips behind me. They're rotating back almost toward the camera a little bit. The feeling is going to be toward the camera, and now I can stay down in my posture. So it's that angle of the leg. If I start to slide this way, I'm going to tend to stand up. And when I do that sliding and standing up, I can't rotate. So I want my hip to do this type of motion, move back, and then I'm going to be able to rotate. So if that's to drive up, and I'm going to go to my straight line release point, which would be here, and I'm going to feel like I'm extended as I come through my leg. So I'm going to do about 100 repetitions, pausing, loading, and then really driving into the ground, getting the butt end of the club to turn up and the club to whip on through. 100 repetitions pausing, and I'm going to do 100 reps going nice, easy, smooth practice swings. There we go. Top of my swing. Piece number one is as I start down, I'm going to let my hands work out away from my body, and my wrists are going to be nice and loose. You can imagine your knuckles. If there was kind of a ceiling or a wall here, I'm going to slide those across that ceiling, and I'm going to let the momentum of my club head continue to fall back, and that's going to allow me to get some lag. Number two, I'm going to feel like as I'm doing that, my club drops a bit behind my shoulders. Now that's going to happen. I'm rotating, inward rotation from my shoulder. My forearm rotates a little bit inward, almost like I'm turning a doorknob to the left. Same thing's happening with my right arm. It's rotating a little bit flatter from there. As that's happening, we got to make sure that we're opening the body. So I want to get to here. I got to make sure my body's opening up as I'm doing this with my hands and arms. So I don't want to just keep my body back here and then swing across, I'm going to go ahead and have my body working to the left as I'm creating this angle of lag, and then I can go ahead and release that. I need to go ahead and release this and let everything turn on through to the left. I have a great video in the straight line release section where I do a hammer throw. I believe it's in level 2, and I talk about throwing that hammer, letting that go. I want to store up this angle of lag, boom, I want to let it go. Let's put all three of those pieces together. I want you to do about 100 reps of each one. So number one, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to work on getting my hands soft, starting down wide, letting the club drop in. Maybe feel like you're scraping your knuckles across the little ceiling that could be here. Number two, I'm going to make sure that I allow my club to flatten out. As I'm doing this, I'm letting my body go ahead and rotate open. That's okay. And then the final piece, number three, after I've got that stored up lag, I've got to go ahead and let that go. Feel like you're throwing the club, letting it go so that you can get that acceleration and you can release. All right, guys, that's what's called ulnar deviation, meaning their hand is rotating down. This is radial deviation. Let's just call that thumb down and thumb up for this video. And let me go ahead and talk about how throughout the entire, as I set up to the golf ball, my thumb is going to be, or my hand is going to be slightly rotated down. Ulnar deviation or thumb down. So that's neutral, meaning my forearm goes right through my wrist. I'm going to be rotated down slightly at address, and that's just going to send my thumb more down as I'm doing my takeaway. Now, as you go to the top of the swing, I'm going to reach probably about, let's say 80 to 90% of the thumb up that I'm going to get in the entire swing. I'm going to continue to get thumb up, or getting that radial deviation of the thumb back toward my body as I start down, and I'm going to be fully maxed out as my left arm is about parallel with the ground. So I've gone from down at address, here's the top of my swing right here, here's my downswing, going even a little bit more up, really getting just a little tiny bit. And then the second or third thing we're going to work on here is as I set up, I'm going to go ahead and open up my hip a little bit, or open up my left foot a little bit. And what that does is that takes your actual hip socket here, and it opens that up. So now as I come on through, I can rotate through on a little more easily. That's the same thing as we're going back. We get a little tighter, we can't load up. As we come through, we get a little tighter, and we can't rotate on through the shot. So I recommend playing the foot open, probably 20 or 30 degrees, and as you come on through the shot, now that's going to allow your hips to rotate so you can get those shoulders to rotate all the way on around like that, and that's going to help on the ground. And the way we're going to do this, we're going to de-loft the club so much. If you look at the loft that's on the face, normally my 4-iron would have 25, 6 degrees, somewhere in that ballpark. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to have enough forward shaft lean at impact to where it has 0 degrees of loft. I've taken all the loft off the face here, and I'm going to go ahead and really bow my left wrist to do this. This is going to be a little bit open, or my shirt buttons are going to be a little bit open, but because my left arm is protracted across my body, it's going to give the appearance that my shoulders are pretty square. But if I do that, I can take all the loft off the club, and I'm just going to be able to simply roll some balls across the ground. So there was no loft, and it never got up in the air at all. What I don't want to do is to start to hit these shots and get them to go, even if where I'm just letting these balls roll across the ground. Maybe you have to hit 10 or 15 shots until I get comfortable with that. Now the part that I find that's hard for most players is to get what feels like a pretty flexion, and that's what's happening as we're coming through impact. And again, we've got to get these hips open to allow us to get in that position to just simply roll the ball across the ground. So once you're comfortable with just the left arm only, it's going to be difficult. We don't want to hit these very far. Those are only going about 25, 30 feet. And again, they're not getting up in the air at all. That left wrist stays nice and flat, or a little bit bowed at impact, and then it's going to release to flat out in front. So we're concentrating on getting that bowed as we're coming through impact. Now the right wrist is a little bit more active. It's going to release a little bit harder. As we're coming into the downswing, that right wrist is going to be what feels like it's completely angled back. If I let my hips open up, now I can get into a position to where I'm going to feel like my right arm's pretty tight. The upper right arm's pretty tight with my chest. Again, my chest is opening up slightly, and my right wrist is really angled back as I'm coming through impact. It almost feels like I'm just tossing a ball down the fairway. Now after impact, I can go ahead and let that release. It actually is releasing through impact, but we're exaggerating for this drill. But I'm going to go ahead and roll some on the ground. Again, these aren't going to get airborne at all. I'm just going to roll those across the ground, hit that one a little bit thin. Let's try one more. And I'm just going ahead and letting my club brush the turf. So it's almost like you're putting with your 3 or 4 iron. So that one was nice and solid and just screwed it right up the fairway. My elbow is up this way into letting that go as I'm coming through the shot. But I'm not going to let it add loft as I'm hitting the ball. Taking all the loft off the club face. My body, my hips, my torso has to open up. My left arm is across my chest, so it's going to look like it's square. But I have to get that to open up so I can keep that club de-lofted on through there. If my body slows down and stops, hit another one here, and I'm going to see if I can get it even lower than the last one. There we go. So that's just a little punch shot. Those are only, and then we're gradually going to go a little bit faster and faster. So on this one, I'll go ahead and hit one more. Let's actually show it in swing. Forty-five degrees in front. My hands and arms are going to be splitting that line. My club is going to be straight down that line, and I'm fully releasing those angles. So here, if we did that line, my club would have a big angle, and I'm releasing that as I go out in front. That's the first part. No matter what you're doing, making a bunker swing, we need to be releasing at the ball with some speed. So if I was going to do the wrong thing and decelerate, I'm sure we've heard we want to accelerate through contact. What would happen underneath the sand, and I wasn't worried about anything that happened past contact or past contact with the sand, and because there was momentum in the head keeps on coming through. Now if we couple those two things, getting the club underneath the ball, underneath the, okay, you can see right there I'm creating a little bit of a mound, and what you're going to do is you're going to release into that mound of sand underneath the ball. Alright, so guys, when you're doing this drill, just a quick tip right there, we do want to shove that dirt down under there so we can create that nice little mound that we're going to hit. But make sure you clear out some space behind it as well so that you're not, you know, if you try that out, you might skip across it and shank it. You want to make sure that there's a clear path in there. Again, this is a drill so you can start really feeling and getting a good visual of hitting that dirt underneath the ball right there. Okay, so you can see doing that a couple times, really easy to get the ball out. And once you do that, get a good feel for how that feels getting the club under the ball, and then throw some balls down in the bunker and just say, forget about what spot you're hitting behind the ball. That's something that you get into a little, is get a little bit more of the leading edge to go in the club into the sand right there. Instead of using the bounce as much, you can actually use the leading edge because that's going to cut down into the sand a lot more. It's going to help get the club underneath the ball. So that's just kind of a quick tip that you can use. You know, if you're not quite comfortable using the bounce out of really tight lies, use that leading edge. It's not going to dig as much because it's tight. 50 degrees open in my hands. Now as I set down to the bunker, now we can see that is really open. So the face of this club is going to feel like it's pointing straight up to the sky. Also, that's the first key. We got to get that face really open. Number 2, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to line up with this ball a little bit up in my stance. Now if I'm putting the ball back in my stance, the tendency is going to be to get steep, and then I'm digging down into the sand. Basically what I want to do is I want to put it up in my stance, and almost like you're flipping the club. This would be terrible technique for a full swing, but it's a great technique out of the bunker. So I want you to go ahead, let your wrist kind of get relaxed, and let them flip a little bit. And we're wanting the bottom of this club to kind of scoot underneath the ball, and we're really going to explode this shot out of there. Now lastly, I'm going to go ahead and take a big aggressive swing. I don't want to get kind of cute with this and take a little mini swing. If we're going to get the good height on it, be explosive. So the first thing we're going to do is squats, just standing squats. And we're going to come down. I want my upper leg to be about parallel with the ground. My chest is out, and I'm really feeling like I'm dropping back my rear end to get nice and deep in that squat, and then I'm coming all the way back up. Again, you want to make sure you go all the way down, and then as you're coming up, you want to explode as fast as you can go. Really try to make sure you pop your hips forward as you're coming up, and that's going to allow you to get a little bit more speed and get used to using the body. Same thing happens in a golf swing. As we come down, we're using the lower body a little bit, and as we release, get into the straight line release, bam, we're extending with the lower body to get that club to kind of turn the corner and come back up and to generate a lot of speed. So using the lower body, very, very important with this. With push-ups, we're using our triceps.